On this week's episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast, we have a special edition episode called Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. And in this episode, Raina Birch asked me about the attorney-client relationship, things that are important in that relationship, things that are not as important in that relationship, things that the client should do to make that relationship stronger, things the attorney should do to make that relationship stronger. So listen in and learn more about how you can work better with your attorney and how your attorney can help serve you better as well.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden. And on today's episode, we're going to do a special edition at what we call Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. And in these special edition episodes, our social media coordinator, Raina Birch, asked me, Jonathan Breeden, questions about family law, life, business, just whatever she likes to ask me questions about. And I do my best to try to answer those questions. And today's questions are going to be about the attorney-client relationship. But before we get to that, we would like you to like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, or any of the other social media channels of the Best Johnston County podcast. The Best Johnston County podcast comes out every single Monday and has now for well over a year. And we've had a lot of great guests. So go back and listen to some of the previous guests like Butch Slaughter, Johnston County Commissioner Chris Johnson, Johnston County Economic Development Director Donna White, State House member, then candidate Brad Knott, now Congressman Brad Knott, about what he thought we needed to do in Washington if he got elected, which he ultimately did. I think you will find all of those fascinating and educational. And like I said, we do this to promote Johnston County, and you'll see why they love Johnston County as much as we love Johnston County. And we continue to do this podcast. And in most episodes, we interview interesting people like we just talked about. But in these special edition episodes, I, Jonathan Breeden, ultimately get interviewed, and I try to answer the questions. So we'll get to it. Ready, Raina?
All right, I'm ready if you are.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So obviously we're filming this right after the holidays. The holidays are usually a pretty big catalyst for kind of people being done and looking for attorneys and wanting to start that divorce process. So when this episode airs, they've probably already started that divorce process in all likelihood if they're going to do it after the holidays. So I would like to talk about the attorney-client relationship. So after they've hired their attorney, what can a client do to better facilitate the relationship with their attorney?
Well, I would say, you want to start after they get hired. I think the relationship starts from the moment you start looking for an attorney. Yeah. You start building a type of relationship by visiting the attorney's website, reading their reviews, reading their bio page. Where are they from? What kind of things they like to do, right? So yeah. The relationship starts there, and then you go and you meet with them, and they do most everybody starts with a consult of some sort. Yeah. And the key thing, in deciding on who to hire and then what you do after you hire them is, are you comfortable with the person, right? I mean, I think that is the most important thing. Are you comfortable with the person you're meeting with or with the information they're giving you about the law firm? In our office, it's not always the person doing the consults can be handling the case. We got lots of people here. We sort of work in a team environment. Yeah. But, are you comfortable with the environment, with the person you're meeting with, what they're talking about, whatever advice they may give in helping make a decision? And then, of course, once you've made the decision to hire a law firm, then the relationship, you'll get with the actual attorneys who handle the case. A lot of times it is the attorney you met with. At a lot of firms, there are not other attorneys. There are a lot of solos, particularly in Johnston County, and it starts to move forward from there. So, I think that the relationship is important. And, one of the things that you need to do is figure out how much you can, not figure out. You need to be able to trust the person you hire.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's the key. Yeah. You need to be able to trust that they know what they're doing, that they have your best interest in heart, and they can communicate with you in a way that you would like to be communicated with. Yes. and that you could sort of get on the same page and have a little bit of synergy as you go through what is inherently a difficult process.
Yes. And as a client, best policy I would say would be honest with your lawyer up front. Like they as all the stories, you've heard it all.
Right. No, and being honest with your attorney, I think, is important. They don't want to have stuff come flying at them in the middle of a hearing that they didn't know about.
Exactly.
And that does happen more than it should.
Yeah.
And it makes it difficult for the attorney in the live fire of a hearing to have to react to evidence they didn't know was coming, a text they didn't know had gotten sent, a behavior that had happened that they were unaware of. Because if they know about it, they can prepare a defense.
Yep.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
Have a witness to contradict it if it's not true.
Yep.
Or figure out a way to spin it to where it may not be as bad as it appears by giving context. None of that is going to be able to happen if they're just sitting in a hearing. Well, it can, but it's not going to be very good if they're sitting in a hearing and a witness says something that they're completely blindsided by.
Yeah.
One example that I can think of that wasn't that long ago was we're in a hearing and the other side puts a family member up to testify that they were smoking dope with our client within the last 2 years with the children in the home. We didn't know our client did drugs.
That's a pretty big thing you probably need to tell your lawyer.
Correct. Much less that they were going to have a witness saying, oh yeah, we smoked dope together with the kids in the home.
Yes.
Right. And so, we were blindsided, and it was true, but I think we could have been a little bit more prepared to deal with it. We could have possibly come with some drug testing to show that this person was no longer on clean now, that we could have had them maybe go and get some drug counseling if they needed that, stuff like that. But we didn't have that information. And that makes it difficult. So you definitely need to be honest. Your lawyer's not here to judge you or whatever. And lawyers don't change the facts.
No.
They present the facts they are, but they do a much better job if they know what the facts are and that you're being honest about the good and the bad as you go into it, particularly if it's going to be a contested litigation case, a high conflict type situation, maybe not as big a deal if you're trying to work something out amicably in a separation agreement, stuff like that, where one side's not trying to one up the other and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So be honest. Don't be embarrassed. Just be forthcoming.
Right. The other thing is, the most important thing that a lawyer can do for their client, and we emphasize this here at the Breeden Law Office, is to communicate with them, right?
Yes.
That is the number one thing. And I tell everybody that works for me, we should prioritize communication. That communication should be proactive. We should be trying to answer questions before they're asked.
Yep.
We now have a new client welcome packet that sort of lays out the steps and procedures of most cases and how long they take. I think people can be surprised at how long some of these things take. We try to create a welcome video for each individual client, and we do try to communicate proactively, which I think is important. If you've hired an attorney and they're not responding to your emails and they're not returning your phone calls within 24 or 48 hours, that's not good.
No.
And unfortunately, I think that is more common than not in the legal profession, which is extremely unfortunate. That is not how I've ever practiced law. That is not how I'm practicing law now. But that is not uncommon. And that doesn't help anything, right? If you have a question, you should be able to get an answer from your attorney fairly quickly, be able to schedule a 15-minute call with them within just a few days so that you can get those questions answered, because, those questions are going to help you make better decisions. And ultimately the goal is to try to get the case over with, right?
Yes.
To me, speed to resolution is extremely important. Communication is most important. How quickly we can get out of these people's lives is the second most important thing. They didn't want to hire us. They don't want to be in court. They don't want to be fighting over divorce. They want to move on in their new life, whatever that looks like. And so we need to be trying to proactively move the case along. And part of doing that is by communicating with the client, figure out what the client's needs, wants are, telling the client what we need to be able to move it to the next stage, that kind of stuff. But if you've hired an attorney and you're not getting return phone calls and you're not getting your emails answered, and you don't know what the next steps are. You don't have a timeline.
Yeah.
You don't have a realistic outcome of what it might be or what you're trying to get, then that's not going to be good. And maybe you need to start looking for a new attorney.
Different attorney. And absolutely. And especially, in high conflict cases, which we see a lot of, because, the people who agree usually can usually come to an agreement between themselves. But when we see the high conflict cases, if somebody's got a question about, my co-parent did this, what should I do? Or how should I respond? Or, and if you're not hearing back for a week or two, that situation's done. It's time sensitive.
Right. Well, the other thing, you can do as the client to save yourself money and to make your lawyer's job easier, lawyers are busy. They've got lots of cases. You're not the only client.
Yeah.
Is to get them the information that they need. So in a timely fashion, fill out your financial affidavit and do it to the best of your ability. Make sure you go back and look and see how much you really are spending on rent and power and food and water and those types of things. So your financial affidavit does accurately reflect your bills at the time you're filling it out. Go ahead and work on if you're doing a property distribution case and a divorce, go ahead and do your equitable distribution inventory affidavit where you list all the property and who has it and the net value of the property and who you proposed was going to get it, and get those account numbers and get those data separation values and get the current values of the things that you have, whether it be the mortgage statement, the car payment, the 401k, the IRAs, go ahead and start putting those documents together. We tell everybody they need 12 months of every financial document prior to the data separation. Every bank statement, every 401k statement, every IRA statement, as many pay stubs as they can get, tax returns, W-2s, all of that information so that we can get a good runway of what the financial situation of the marriage was leading up to the data separation. And then we need all of those documents from the data separation to current so that we can see what happened after the parties separated. But the more of those things you can put together and the quicker you can put them together and upload them in a file that's very easy for your that's labeled correctly what it is, and it's very easy for your attorney to access, it will make it easier for them to do the case, make it easier on their paralegals. It'll also save you some money because, somebody's got to put all this stuff together. Yeah. And if they're charging you $200, $300, $400 an hour for some work you could have done if you'd have just worked a little hard on it yourself.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah. And so we talk about, what clients can do. Is there anything clients shouldn't do? Obviously, we already said, don't lie to your lawyer.
I mean, most attorneys charge for the communication. Now, the communication, as we just talked about, is the most important part of the relationship. Yeah. But most attorneys are going to charge for every single communication. Yeah. We're going to charge you for every email we send you. We're going to charge you for every phone call we have with you. That's what we sell. We don't sell widgets. We don't sell shoes here. We sell time. Yes. And so we do have to charge for our time. But it would be important for clients to make a list of questions.
Yes.
And one email or make a list of questions for one 15-minute phone call with the attorney versus sending 1, 2, 3, 4 emails a day or calling and asking for a call back, which is hard. It needs to get on the schedule. It's almost impossible to call and actually get an attorney. They're booked up, and they have to schedule their phone calls. But, consolidate the communication. Yeah. Get 4, 5, 6 questions into an email. Set up a 15-minute phone call where you can go through 4, 5, 6 questions. But it gets very expensive and very time-consuming for the attorney to answer each individual email with each individual question if you start just sending them sort of stream of consciousness. Like, I have this question, let me email them, right? Like what I would say is write that down and have a list of questions for my attorney, and maybe every 3 days or every 4 days, put all those questions in a single email. It'll save you money and make it easier on your attorney.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
And so I know we talked about this or you talked about this, I believe, with Carly on one of the episodes where they sell cars and they talk about the informed consumer, the informed customer. I know that like all the doctors will tell you like don't go WebMD your symptoms. Like come in and just talk to us. So how does that work with law? Is it better to have the informed customer, or do you guys kind of tell them like don't don't try to figure it out, like just come in and talk to us?
I think it's important for the customer to have a general idea of what we're trying to do and what the law is.
Yeah.
It is not helpful for them to come in and tell you about their cousin's divorce or their sister's divorce and what happened there, right? Those facts are different. Could be in a different county, could be in a different state.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do think it is important for clients of this law firm or any law firm to have a general idea of the law, what has to be proven for whatever success they're trying to have, the odds that they will be successful in what they're trying to get. I do think that that is important, which is why I wrote the book, Divorce Law in North Carolina, What You Need to Know, that you can download for free from my website or call our office. We'll be happy to mail you a paperback copy for free, which starts sort of at a very 10,000 foot view, gives you an overview of North Carolina divorce law.
Yeah.
It is not specific to your case. It talks about different types of custodial schedules. It talks about the distribution of property. It talks a little bit about alimony, how you get it, where it's from, all of those types of things, I think is important. I think that all of the clients of this law firm should read the book. We have, this is on YouTube. You might be watching this on YouTube. We have probably 150 YouTube videos of me answering questions in 2 and 3 minute segments that people have come in and asked me. I think the answers to those questions are important, and you can educate yourself by watching those videos and stuff. Now, they're not going to be your specific fact pattern, but they're going to be, there are a lot of generalities here, and so, but I do think that that's important. So you start to educate yourself. My website, I believe, has over 400 pages now. I've written on that website for years and years and years and years and years. And so, we have blogs and all this stuff. So there's information out there. I have it out there. I want people to consume it the way they want to consume it. So I do think it is important that you educate yourself on what the law is, your position under the law, what your rights are. And then, you talk to your attorney specifically about what you want to see happen and whether the law is going to apply the way you think it's going to apply, what strategies you want to take. I do think that's important. So I never discourage anybody from educating themselves about the law and the process.
Yeah.
I do discourage you from talking to your cousin or your sister or somebody else, because that's probably not going to be helpful, because your case is not their case, and the facts aren't going to line up.
Exactly. And, the more people, the more that they consume, especially the more videos that they watch that you've done where you're answering those questions, a lot less questions they have to ask their lawyer, a lot less time they have to pay for if they're already knowledgeable about at least the baseline.
Correct.
So they can spend their time actually delving into their case and not trying to explain the generalities first and then going deeper than that.
Well, and if they're familiar with the terminology, when my wife and I were having our first baby, and you go to the birthing classes, and there was a textbook, and they didn't really go through the textbook of the classes, but me being a lawyer, I read the whole book.
Of course.
Right. And so they didn't go through everything, but I became very familiar with the terminologies of what was going to happen. We were going to have this baby, and, things didn't quite go as smoothly as we'd hoped. And when they started talking, I knew, because I had read the book, what they were talking about and what was a likely next step.
Yeah.
And everything worked out great, but it calmed my nerves to know what they were talking about. Well, if I hadn't read that book, they didn't cover this particular situation in the birthing class, but it was in the book because it was fairly common. So that's the way I like to tell people, read my book, read the website, watch some of the videos, become familiar with the terminology, like primary custodian, secondary custodian, joint custodian, sole legal custody, joint legal custody. There's no such thing as sole physical custody.
Nope.
That kind of stuff we'll help you. So when your lawyer starts saying, okay, well, we're going to try for primary physical and joint legal, well, I want sole. Well, there's no such thing as sole physical, right?
Yeah.
And you got to have certain things to even get sole legal, and it's very hard to get. And you may not have those in your case, even though you really may dislike the other person that doesn't want their opinion on anything. So, that kind of stuff I do think is important. I do think that most consumers now are reading and doing their homework, reading the reviews. People come in here. We have lots of 5-star reviews.
Yep.
We have lots and lots of 5-star reviews. We've done it. I'm very happy to have all those. They've come in, they've read the reviews. They know, tell me the reviews, what we're good at. And what we're good at is communication, which I think is the most important thing that we provide to the clients. And I think that's what lawyers do. And I do think it's the number one complaint that the state bar gets when it comes to disciplining clients is that their lawyer is not communicating with them. And it's the number one complaint, has been. It was the number one complaint when I was in law school. It's still the number one complaint 25 years later.
Well, and that's crazy because communication has only gotten easier as time has gone on.
Correct.
So it's a little insane that that's still the number one complaint. That's when it's more on the user end and not the technology end.
Well, right. And I referred somebody that we could not help to another attorney, not too long ago. And I reached out to that person and was like, so what's going on with your case? And they were like, I hired them 7 weeks ago and I've not heard a word. I don't know what's going on with my case. So I reached back out to the attorney that I made the referral to. They answered my email. I then communicated it to their client.
Yeah.
That
Which should not happen. You didn't have to do,
right.
But when you care, like as much as you do, that
right.
that person needs communication. If they're not getting it, you're gonna try to facilitate it, or because
right, and
it's important,
right, and that's the thing. I mean, this entire office, all 23 of us that work here, really, it's about providing as good a client service as we can and communicating the best we can, because that's important, right? I know that's the most important thing. And so I want to be able to do that to help calm people's nerves and help lower their anxieties and stuff like that. And so that's really kind of what we prioritize here. But, in general, law firms just in North Carolina and around the country, the bar for customer service is laying on the ground. They don't have enough staff.
Yeah.
They've got more work than they can do. They don't have systems in place to get the work done. And it ends up being they end up providing a bad service. And
and you're already going through a bad experience.
Right.
You don't want another one on top of it.
Right. And that's unfortunate. That is truly, truly unfortunate. And it's not that those lawyers or law firms, they're not trying to provide a bad experience. They just are, because they don't have the systems to allow them to provide a better experience.
Yeah.
Where I sit around here all the time trying to think of how to make the client experience better.
Yeah.
Because the outcome, we don't have a ton of control over. That's the big secret. Lawyers do all this great lawyering and arguing, but in family law, the facts control, and we don't control the facts. But we do control whether you're communicated with, your rights are defended, that we're fighting for you if you need to be fought with. We're giving you reasonable advice. We're telling you what would be a reasonable settlement. We're building that relationship. We're building trust, and we're trying to get the case over as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
That's the things that we can do and that we work very hard on here to do for people that I don't know that all the other law firms are trying to do.
Yeah. And I think something that you guys do here that's really innovative and important is you make all of them take a personality test to make sure that they are empathetic. And, these clients, like you said, every lawyer has multiple clients, but I feel like, when we're talking and when you guys are doing your team thing and you're communicating and brainstorming and helping each other out, it's not just a number, it's not just a client, it's a name, it's a person. Like, you guys genuinely care for your clients and their outcomes, what they want, what they're looking for, to be heard, all of that.
Correct. Right. And we all do. I mean, that's one of our core values is empathy. And we work very hard to hire people who are empathetic, that do have compassion for the people they represent. And, and these are not easy cases.
No.
And sometimes our clients are, they're difficult. They're going through a lot, and that lot can come out against us, even though we're trying to help. But we have to understand that and work with it and empathize and realize where they're coming through and see if we can't still help them.
Yeah.
And that's important, because if you really can't do family law and really stand up for the kids. That's what we're focused on here, is the children more than anything else. If you don't truly care about your fellow man and how that goes and their future, whatever that future may be. And it may not be the future you would want for yourself, but it is going to be their future. And you need to care about what that future is going to be, what they want it to be, and helping them get there as best you can.
Yep. Yeah. And that's something that I see on a daily basis with everyone here, is to, make sure that clients feel heard, the children are, always put first. And like you said, understanding that this is a rough experience. This is a rough time for anybody going through it. And stress levels are high. Anxiety levels are through the roof. And, we all have those bad days. But, working with them, understanding that, pushing through, still getting them, or at least trying to get them the results that they want.
Right. And then that's what we try to do. And I think we have, pretty good success with that.
Well, I would say with all the 5-star reviews on Google, I'd say pretty good success rate with that.
Well, we try. That's what I say about that. So anyways,
I think we're done. I didn't really have any other questions, unless you have something that you want to share that a lawyer, like, I think you already said, if they're not communicating, is that the number one thing, like, people should look out for with their attorney-client relationship?
Yeah, I do think that if you're not being communicated with, if your questions aren't being answered, if you're more confused after your lawyer answers your question, that's usually not a good sign either, as far as that's concerned. And, and also if you're being pushed into something that you don't feel comfortable with, that's not a good situation either. But I do think the attorneys can, I think most attorneys are trying to do a good job, can educate you so that you can feel more comfortable about whatever decision you're going to make. I think that's important. Well, and that goes back to the beginning relationship about establishing that rapport, building that trust, communicating proactively, all of that stuff, so that when it comes to the time to make a decision as to what might be a fair settlement, when your attorney says, okay, I think it's a fair settlement, you trust them that it is a fair settlement. And I think sometimes
they're not just trying to get you out the door, like it really is.
Right. And I think when they don't build that relationship, it can be difficult. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I think we work real hard at trying to build those relationships here at the Breeden Law Office. Yes. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast, a special edition episode, Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. As we mentioned earlier, please like, follow, subscribe to this podcast, wherever you're seeing it, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, or any of the other social media channels of the Best of Johnston County podcast. Share this podcast on your Instagram stories and tag us at the Best of Johnston County. We look forward to bringing you the next episode next week. Give us a 5-star review as well. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.